favorite stories, and you could probably tell it a lot better. So I'll lead you down the path, and you can tell it. I think Ray kind of told us this story a little bit about your father when he was first started like racing and with Brumos, I guess, or wanting to race and all that kind of stuff, and has involvement with Brumos. But he kind of pretty much just walked into the trailer and was like, I'm gonna race.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Is that kind of how it happened?
Yeah, I know Peter and Hurley. They met at an SCCA at an autocross event. Hurley was fast, and my dad kind of came into involvement with Peter at the dealerships, and really picked up into racing. I mean, my dad grew up loving cars. Grew up in upstate New York, but I've got videos of him talking. He had a 48 MG, which was his dad's first car, and ended up being the car my dad drove to high school. I actually still have it.
That's good. You better.
Yeah, I'll never sell it. It's like 1948. It's been in one family its whole life. It's
How
pretty
cool is that?
Yeah. Cool. But my dad at 16 had pulled the mufflers off of it and would rip around New York, and his friends' moms would chase him with brooms, and I've heard these stories forever. But yeah, he came here and had a good relationship with Peter, and and ultimately really got into more serious racing. And I remember, when I was young, the first race car I can really remember my dad driving was a Chevron, and it was a dangerous car. I mean, it was a fast car, but he really just I don't think he was ever maybe at the level of Peter and Hurley, of course, but his management skills moving forward and what he evolved into really helped. Peter and Hurley kind of do their thing.
Apply that onto the track as
Absolutely.
well. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You have that mind where you can apply it to certain things, and it still works, because you're like, look, you still need to manage this stuff like this.
Yeah, one funny story I'll tell you real quick. And I don't remember what car it was. I think it was a 993 GT2. It was a Roar car they ran 1 year back in the 90s. And a guy last year at Daytona was telling me, man, your dad, I'll never forget. We were at Daytona. We were testing. It was for the 24-hour. And I guess my dad told Hurley or whoever, it might have been Walter Rohrl, was a driver. He said, go and just shoot through the bus stop. Just don't even go through it. Just come through and then pull, do a lap and then pull in. So I didn't quite understand it, but what he had done was he'd shaved like 4 seconds off of their time on the timer, and then pulled in and parked it. Well, what that did was made every other team like, wait a minute.
What happened?
How did they do that? And they just parked and they just watched everyone go frantic. And my dad had
so the
that.
people who didn't see it, they're just like,
no one saw it,
exactly. So it's like, how did this happen?
On the timing board, they're like, wait a minute, that guy's, how's he 3 seconds faster than everyone? And it was purely a strategic move, because then guys were putting their cars in the garage, and they're making adjustments, and they're like,
why are we going?
That's so smart, because you create pandemonium, and everybody's trying to find those seconds now.
Yeah, he was definitely. My dad was never a cheater, but he surely was a guy that knew how to, take what you had and utilize all of it.
That's what I was going to say. He knew the rules, and he was just like, this. Yeah. I mean, that's psychology, is what that is. Yeah, that's really good. That's a strategic psychology move.
I had to grow up under that.
He's like, yeah. So. That's pretty much how it was for me. Like, I could never outthink my dad.
Never.
Well, we'll see what Harris does with this.
Exactly. But it was it was great to see him.
It goes back to those high school stories. You're like, I came back, I parked the car here. He's like, no, you didn't.
Oh, I tried. I mean, I remember in high school I got as good as putting dimes or dollars in the garage right where the tire sat. Yeah. So if I took something, which really wasn't till later in my life, I was always so scared to do that.
Yeah.
But, I turned like 17.
Exactly. You're like, I'm doing it.
There's a Ferrari in the garage. Exactly. My dad's in Germany right now,
and I'm going for it.
Yeah, my friends are having a party.
Time to flex.
Just gonna do it.
I'm
gonna do it. Yeah, I'd put the dime right at the back tire. And
he'd still know, probably.
Yeah, he probably knew. He never said anything, but he was smarter than your average bear for sure. So
100%. And if you guys that are listening that don't know about Bob, he was a tall man too. He was like, what was your 6'5"?
6'4".
6'4".
He was. He had the belly of a beast. I mean, he was a big front heavy guy.
Yeah, he was a man's man.
Yeah, everyone called it the booming voice of God. I mean, he had a deep voice. He was, but he was a big lover.
Yeah.
I mean, even for all the guys that worked for him, people today talk about it. He'd come and he might discipline you, but
Yeah.
I mean, when it was over, and it was back to being family.
Yeah.
He was always
Definitely a guy you didn't want to make upset. It's like heavy hands.
yeah, definitely had heavy hands. I learned that once when I was younger. Yeah.
No, your dad was such an influence with everything, though, and I think that's really cool, and then you got to experience so much of that, just being in there. And some of the cool stories that I even heard from, like, even Robert Kennedy when talking to him, and he's like, I used to have to babysit Harris when he was running around the shop.
A lot of those guys, man, still today, like Charles up at Porsche, a lot of those guys I've been around my whole life.
Yeah.
So it's cool that I've grown up a little bit now and I'm able to just be friends with them, versus when I was younger. And I'm a kid.
It's
they build
more,
a relationship.
Yeah, there's not that real relationship. It's like you're an adolescent, and then they're kind of older. It's kind of like, you're watching me. There's not a lot of
boss's kid.
Yeah.
I'm young. I'm probably a little punk, a little,
Exactly.
a little bit of a jerk.
Exactly.
Like great hairs.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Exactly. But now it's.
You're like, you know how big that kid is? He's a terror.
Yeah.
He's like tearing everything up in here.
But now I'm close with all the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily there's still a handful of them that work at the Fields dealership now, and obviously Leatherwood, Don, Leatherwood, and
Don's
all the
awesome.
guys here.
We were just talking to Don and telling him we're gonna get some tequila out and we're gonna put you on the show. And he's like, I'm in.
Oh, he will be in.
Yeah.
If I ever have to get Don a gift, it's a bottle of tequila. He loves his tequila or a cigar.
Yeah,
one of the two.
Good, both actually. That'd be good. That'd be good.
That'll be good.
Good to do. So then, you spent your childhood doing that. So let's talk a little bit as you get a little bit older. Obviously, you probably started getting interested in racing yourself, correct?
I did. Yeah.
So then, talk to us a little bit about that.
I was I was never forced to go to the track. I mean, it just became a part of my life. So when I had the opportunity, I want to say I was probably 14. We went to Vegas on a family trip, and my dad had a friend, Sonny Vogel, and his grandson or his son raced Legends cars, which are like the half scale. I don't really know. I don't remember much. But anyways, my dad's like, hey, we're in Vegas, and I'm, it's a family trip. And he's like, we're actually going to go to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I'm like, what? And we go out there, and he, puts me in a Legend car. And it's my first, I think it was like my first time ever in a race car. And it was fun. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm actually driving it. I hadn't really driven. I wasn't 16 yet. I mean, I'd driven some stuff around. Actually learned how to drive on the ranch back here. But
That's awesome.
But yeah, after that, I did the Derek Daly Academy out there in Vegas again. And then, that was an open wheel car and learned a little bit there. And then from that point, I just came back here and was able to go with them to test days, some HSR events. And then from there, I really learned my driving of Porsches with Hurley, which was amazing because I'll never forget.
What a better teacher.
Yeah. Well, it's like
Hurley taught me how to drive the Porsche around the track properly.
The first time I'll never forget this. I was about 15 or 16, and I got in with Hurley in the 91 supercar, which, you guys have seen, 965. And we go on Roebling Road, and we go out, and my dad's like, just ride with Hurley and, do a couple laps with him. You can see kind of what he does. And I'm like, all right. And we come out of the pits. We go, the first lap's kind of soft and, come out of 11 onto the straightaway there. And it's like Hurley's just full out. And I'll never forget, I mean, he's full throttle, full boost. He's driving. He's got his arm on the windowsill here, and he's holding the wheel here, like on the left side with one hand, and he's adjusting his mirror. We're doing like 140, and I'm like, oh my god, like what's going? And I'm like kind of sitting there as a kid. I'm like looking at him, and Hurley's just like looking around, and he's,
You're like, is he looking at the road?
I'm like, what? He must know it's something. And we come down to the brake markers, and it's like the 3 marker, the 2 marker, and it was probably between the 1 and the 2. Which is really late, at least for me. I'm not a pro racer.
Of course.
And I look down, and Hurley takes both of his feet. I'll never forget this. And he has both of his feet on the brake pedal at once. I mean, just jammed them. And heel toe, blip, and threw that thing into a turn. And that was when I first realized. I'm like, oh my god, like this is crazy.
Yes,
I mean,
what it takes.
even in like the open wheel
this is
stuff.
how you drive a car like this.
Yeah, and I mean, it was the first time I'd ever really been in any type of car violently. I'd ridden in street cars around there with my dad, and that's a whole different ballgame. But to get in an actual supercar or the supercar champion IMSA car and have him throw that thing around, it was amazing. So after that. I got it was a 924 race car that was actually the Brumos school car, and they kind of converted to my race car. It was a momentum car. It wasn't fast, but at 16, I was blessed to be able to race that.
Yeah. And it probably taught you a lot too.
It did.
Like as far as like taking your lines and not being overpowered. You're not overpowering the track.
Absolutely, especially a track like Roebling. It's such a momentum track. So I really got the feel for that car, which was a front engine car, and then I went from that to a 914 4-cylinder open top car, which was also kind of a momentum car, and that was until 17 or 18, and then I finally got to share my dad's race car, my dad and Hurley's race car.
That's cool.
With me, which is the one that was just in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that was, that car's got a big hot
awesome.
motor in it, Hewland gearbox, and I mean, I'll never forget the first time that he said, "Hey, just take my car out." I said, "Are you kidding me?" And I pulled out of the pits. It was Roebling again, and I mean, I remember thinking, "I think it's not running right." It was like under 5,000 RPMs. I had my foot down. It was, it was jolting. It was like, and it hit like 5,000, 5,500, and it just came on.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, okay, I'm in a real race car now."
Exactly.
And then I started.
It's like, it's not happy below 5,000. Yeah. That's why it was doing that.
And then I never wanted to drive any of the other cars again. I actually sold my the 914. Brian Johnson from AC/DC, his wife races it now.
Okay.